Hello, everyone, and welcome to an edition of the Christian Recorder Dialogues. We're back. Yes, after our hiatus for General Conference and recovering, we are back with more informational sessions to help us navigate through this time. We are launching a special series of dialogues that we'd like to tell you about regarding the 2024 election. But before we do that, as always, we are asking you to tell us where you're from, give us your district, and also pay attention because we're going to be asking you to give us some questions later on. So we have with us today Reverend Dr. Miriam J. Burnett, or Reverend Miriam J. Burnett, MD, the Episcopal Supervisor of the Episcopal District. And along with us, we also have Sister Jacquelyn Dupont-Walker, our Connectional Director of Social Action. Ms. Dupont-Walker will tell us more about our programming, and then we'll go into this important discussion about Project 2025 and health. Ms. Dupont-Walker.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, and thank you always as the editor of the Christian Recorder, the storied document for all of us in the African diaspora for being ready to pivot and do what is necessary. Thank you for the outstanding work of the Christian Recorder and for this particular series that we're pleased to bring to you as the AMEV Alert, the official voter mobilization instrument of African Methodism. Today, we are pleased to launch the pop-up of voter dialogue. We hope that you today will listen carefully and be ready to take action. Every day for the past 30 days, we have sent to you a countdown alert. That countdown alert gives you something to do every day. We ask that you share it not only with your immediate circle, but that you find 10 people who are casual voters and send it to them and ask them to send it to 10. It's our 10 times 10 times 10 formula so that every eligible voter gets to vote. You're probably aware that early voting has started in some states. You may be aware that in some states like California, every eligible voter has their ballot in their hands. We want to make sure those ballots get to the ballot box, that they are cast. And so everything we can do to help you reach those that we need to reach is very, very important. Today, there could be no better start than with Supervisor Reverend Dr. Miriam Burnett, who has been passionate about keeping us healthy in our well-being, passionate about letting us know the diseases and diseases that we have confronted as a people because of many health inequities. Project 2025 that most of us are really wishing was among those banned readings is real. And so today, starting our pop-up series, she will bring us a perspective that is near and dear to all of us. How does it impact our health? I am so happy to be a part of this audience listening because every time I hear from those trusted voices, I have something else I can share with those I see. It is my major speech. It is my small talk. When I'm in the line at the bank, in the grocery store, when I'm in the line at the airport, it is my small talk about voting. And this shirt that I have it on for conversation. It is our time. It's our watch. AME family and friends, this is the most impactful election of our lifetime. We don't want to blow it. Thank God that we're here at this time connected. Let's do it. Back to you, Dr. Thomas.
Dr. Dupont-Walker, thank you so much for that. And I believe you mentioned that daily countdown that our General Secretary is sending out. I would ask the tech team if they can post the example that we have from today so that you can see what these things are doing in your email. Let's take a look at that. That's number 28. And again, we've been sending these things out every single day, and there's something to do every single day. And as Dr. Burgess and I were talking, we know that there is never enough voter information that we can give you. So we are happy that Social Action has given us these tools. And again, these tools for action. I am happy to have with us today Dr. Burnett. Dr. Burnett, the person who will save your life. And we know that Dr. Burnett has saved our lives many, many times in the AME church. And there were times where we were told, we don't want to wear a mask. And then Dr. Burnett was right. even at this last general conference. So, Dr. Burnett, I would ask that we begin talking about what we need to talk about and just really dig into Project 2025 in health, because it ain't gone away. Even though the Republic is united, it is not gone away. So, Dr. Burnett, I would just like to begin with a broad impact, looking at the health in general. So let's first talk about the social determinant of health and what are these key areas for those.
I think it's important. And first, let me thank you for this opportunity. It is always my pleasure. And Sister Jackie, I have already voted. Before I left home, I put my ballot in the box, and 2 days later got my confirmation that it had been registered. So I have taken care of.
Dr. Burnett, if I could have you hold for 1 second. Your face is frozen in the screen. So I'm going to ask our tech team if we can pull you out and pull you back in so we can see you talk, because you're giving us the strong supervisor look right now. And I want to see if we can get that fixed. All right. And we have you back. And there might be some internet stuff going on where you are, because we can't really see you, but we know you're in the hotel in the fifth. We know you're in the hotel in St. Louis right now.
And it says I'm connected with all of the bars, so not sure what to do. Out and come back in.
Stop your camera and let's try this again. And we're going to wait for a second, and that should clear that up. And pop it back on, and that should do that. All right, we see you, but it's still doing something with the camera. So how about, so we can at least see your face, just turn the camera back off so it has your icon. There we go. We'll just stick with that for now, because I don't know what's going on, but I do like that photo. Because the photo that we did have, I was scared with the photo that we did have. So we'll stay with this. But we were talking about the social determinants of health and just giving people, the broad impact of health, because again, health is just not about disease, as Dr. Dupont-Walker said, it's about dis-ease. So let's talk about the social determinants of health.
So a social determinant of health means, and I'm going to read the definition as given to us by the Department of Health and Human Services, but it's also used by the World Health Organization. And it says they create social, physical, and economic environments that promote the attaining the full potential for health and well-being for all. Translation: everything that we do, and especially for those of us in the African diaspora, you will find that what has always existed is a definition of health that is not only our physical health, but it's our social, our mental, our economic, our educational. It is who we are, what we are, where we live, how we live. And so when you talk about it, you also, and go to the slide that gives you the 5 key determinants. When you, that one, thank you. So when you talk about social determinants of health, you see economic stability, you see education access and quality, you see social and community context, healthcare access and quality, and neighborhood and built environments. And it gets even further into that. When you break it even further down, you see healthcare and quality is insurance coverage. Do you have access to insurance? Do you have access to insurances of all kinds? Are we looking now at churches that are having difficulty maintaining their building and property insurance? You look at people with difficulty getting health insurance, life insurance, umbrella insurance, pick an insurance. That all falls under healthcare and quality. If you don't have them, you have major issues. If you have poor insurance, it gets even worse, because in some cases you do better to have no insurance because you meet other criteria than if you have poor insurance, because that eliminates everything else you could potentially be eligible for. It's health literacy. A PhD. Dr. Thomas, you go to the doctor's office and the doctor is starting to talk to you about health and health access and health care and what you need to do about a particular issue in order to maintain your preventive medicine and stay healthy. And they start using medical lingo, medical language.
Yep.
You say to them, what?
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. And even though they could break it down to a 8th grade reading level, which is what we continue to talk about when we say literacy, they're still talking as if you have a PhD in medicine, but you don't. It's like when I go to my accountant and my accountant says, okay, this is what I need you to do. And she gives me this laundry list of things to do. And I say, stop. Unless you're talking about medical language or public health language, you need to break it down to me as if I'm 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's health literacy. So we don't communicate that way. When we talk about transportation to the healthcare facilities, many people can't get to where they need to get. When we were in Lesotho, one of the major issues for pregnant women was the nearest facility to deliver a child was 4 hours walking distance away.
Wow.
So what do? We put health clinics in churches up in the mountains.
Wow.
But in the United States, we have public transportation, but now it takes you a mile to walk once you get off the bus.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're in a rural community. How do I get to the transportation that's going to allow me to do the mammogram, to do the prostate health check, to check my blood pressure? Do I have access to a blood pressure cuff? Maybe, maybe not. Copays. Copays can be anywhere between $1 and $500 or $1,000 or $5,000, going back to that health insurance coverage. So I have a health insurance plan, but I can't pay my copay. So what am I going to do? I'm still going to be at home. I'm still not going to go to the doctor's office. I'm still not going to go to urgent care. I'm still not going to go to the emergency room. It's still a problem. Provider availability falls under that same healthcare and quality piece. Do I have a physician who looks like me? Do I have a provider who looks like me? Do I have access to the proper kind? If I have a heart condition, is there a cardiologist within a 100-mile radius of where I live? Maybe, maybe not, depending on where you live. And is the quality care one of the things that we use to define access to care is access to good quality care, to excellent quality care, depending on where you are. You may get who shot John who has no idea about anything. Do you have access to anybody that has information on clinical trials so that when they say this won't work, you have something else to do? Do you have access to primary health care? Even more of an issue. And do all you have access to primary health care that's going from somebody who potentially looks like you or at least understands your cultural impact? I can tell someone in the South not to eat pork, not to eat high salt content foods. But if I don't tell them how to make it taste like those collard greens have fat back in, I've done nothing. Do I know how to do that? Do I know how to teach you how to do that? Healthcare quality, one of the social determinants of health. Let me just drop into one more and then we'll be able to get back to the rest in a second. Neighborhood and built environment. What are we talking about when we're talking about housing? What are we talking about when we talk about transportation, safety, crime and violence, walkability? We tell everybody, go walk. You need to walk for your exercise, keep your blood flowing, but yet you live on a street that is highly trafficked, that has trucks running through it. How are you supposed to safely walk anywhere? Is there a sidewalk? Isn't there a sidewalk? Is it safe enough for you to walk? Can you walk by yourself? Do you need a group of folk walking with you? And is that group of folk now vulnerable because it's a group of Black people walking down the street? recreation and parks. Do we have parks? I was pastoring in an area, and one of the parents called me and said, my child just picked up a needle in the park. What do I do now? Now what? So we may have parks, but what are they being used for? What do the children have access to? What do we as adults who want to go swing on the swings and clear our mental health? Because I still like swinging in a swing. But do I have access to do that? I don't know. Do we have access to healthy food? Or do we live in food deserts? Or if we don't live in a food desert, is the food that's available to us so high priced and of poor quality that we don't want to eat it anyway? So we defer to high salt, high starch, high sugar food because that is what is available to us. Well, now we're all hypertensive and diabetic.
You know, Supervisor, just listening, and I want to leave these here just for a second so y'all can take in this holistic approach to health, economics, education, access, equality, social and community context, healthcare access and quality, neighborhood and built environment. As you were talking, I was sitting here listening around my office. I'm sitting in my office in Charleston, and I have in front of me my and I'll wait for our tech team to clear this off and get the photos back up. I have in front of me my open enrollment worksheet for my job. And, you know, even though this is supposed to be written at the 8th grade level, some of the things about the elections you can take and not take and do and not do for your health plans are not clearly explained, like you said. And it's just, and I'm sitting here listening to you talk about these things. Food deserts. I work at a campus where we have a food pantry for students because we are literally in the middle of what some would call a food desert downtown because there's no grocery store in walking distance of the campus, except for the corner store. And just thinking about, you know, just what it means to be holistic health. You took me back to wellness class in high school when I first learned about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And, you know, the stability at the bottom and raising it to the top. And this fact that health is not just take these pills and go. It's how are you living? How can you be healthy? And I'm going to say it here. You've said it. Dupont-Walker said it. We AMEs have an unhealthy meeting style that we have to change. I was appalled at General Conference when after you told us to put the masks on, that same night when I saw campaigning, I saw nary a mask among the people in the caravans, except for me and like 2 other folks. So
that's the same look I get.
But understanding that our health, you're only as wealthy as you're healthy, and understanding the dimensions of health. Ms. Dupont-Walker, what are your thoughts before we move on to the getting deeper into this?
I really, as a community developer and organizer, I wanted us to hear how this ties to our ministry in the community and why it's important for us to be there, because it is the voices like your true voices that people will hear and listen to. But the other voices, some of them are simply trying to sell something, trying to make sure people go in a certain direction with decisions. And in this election season, that's what's extremely important. That's why today's dialogue is important, because you're setting the baseline for what is good, healthy environment and good, healthy lifestyle. Now, what's the threat to that? I'm sitting on the edge waiting.
And that's where we're coming to this thing today, because I see we have in our audience, we have with us the new, I believe, the executive director of the Medical Health Commission, Dr. Betsy Addison, if I'm not mistaken. She's watching with us, so we're thankful to have you around. So we wanted to frame this discussion talking about holistic health to help you understand in depth what's at stake with Project 2025. So let's dig on into it. Supervisor, tell us, what are some of the examples and how are they impacted? if Project 2025 is fully implemented?
Well, my first shock when I began reading was to realize that more than half of this document, this 922 pages, if you read the whole piece, is more than half, about 500 to 600 pages of this 922 is directly related to these social determinants of health.
So that's to maim us or kill us, right?
Exactly. Directly related. One of the pieces talks about recommendations around the USDA and agriculture. And it says that USDA has to go away, basically. It says that USDA should no longer be implementing the criteria for what's a healthy food. That we need to remove the association of the U.S. from the UN in terms of pushing sustainable development goals connected to food production. You want to eliminate the sustainable goal that says no hunger? That's what this document says. It says we also need to make sure that efficient and innovative food production is good, but it also eliminates the one vehicle we have, the USDA, to make sure that that happens. Has anybody taken the time to look and see how many food recalls we've had this month alone, and we're only on the 8th day of the month? But we're going to eliminate USDA or make it such that it is not impacting food efficiency and food growth efficiency. It wants to eliminate the Commodity Credit Corporation Act. It wants to do things that will refrain and keep us from addressing climate change as it impacts health and impacts food production. Specifically saying we no longer want to deal with climate change and how it impacts our ability to grow food. Okay, so let's not deal with climate change. But we have the second hurricane, catastrophic hurricane, headed to the state of Florida, where it's going to wipe out the rest of what was even potentially remaining as it relates to our production of citrus fruits. So where are we getting our vitamin C from? Because it's not going to exist. It's those kinds of things when you start looking at these social determinants and what of the departments that we have in the U.S. and them being eliminated. Go to look at page 301 of this document. If you have access to it, look at what they want to do with the WIC program. You go to the WIC program and it says, we only want one brand of infant formula. What? One brand of infant formula when we have children with multiple problems digesting formulas and often have to go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. How do we do that? How do we look at eliminating or potentially decreasing the definition around community eligibility provision, which dictates how we look at the school food programs, the school nutrition programs? It wants to change the provision so that only an individual school or an entire school district as a whole meets the 40% criteria and not just a subset. In other words, we want to make sure that you Black and poor people who need this service potentially can't get it because we're looking at everybody in the school district as a whole. So that means that unless 40% of a potential school district that's got over 200 schools in it, but only 5 of the schools are in poor Black, brown, Latino, poor neighborhoods. Y'all don't get any food now because we don't meet the 40% criteria anymore. But how does that bother to impact our ability to learn? No food, no learning. But it wants to eliminate it. Go to page 303 in the document. Y'all need to read this thing page by page by page by page. The Department of Education piece says that it wants to, they're going to eliminate the ability, well, one of the things they want to get rid of the entire department. But yet, the entire department, but yet, when you look at social determinants of health, the education piece requires education access and quality, early childhood education, language, vocational training, literacy, higher education, all which report to the Department of Education. But you don't want that program anymore. You don't want the ability to have student loans taken back and paid off for you.
No forgiveness.
Which impacts the economic stability piece of social determinants of health, because involved in that is income and debt. No school, because I can't think about even potentially getting student loans, and I can't potentially look at how am I going to pay it off. I can't even buy a house, which translates into economic stability, generational economic stability.
Dr. Burnett, what does it say about the large farmers who get major subsidies not to grow food?
It says you don't get that either. And it said that there are three programs related to farmers getting subsidies that they want to eliminate or change in a way that they only get one or maybe none.
I want us to sit here with this for a second, because this is, and I want our listeners who are here, and I'm thankful for those of you who are here and making these comments in the chat, that we started off by reminding people that health is not just about pills. Do not be deceived that, and I'm glad that Ms. Lucas just popped up here in the chat. Sandra Lucas feels that it continues to go down the rabbit hole of no way out. That's exactly what we're trying to look at this thing. They will want you to believe that the only concern is about bans on women's bodies and female reproductive choices, which we need to talk about openly in this forum. But health holistically, look at the fact that the Republican plans would eviscerate our social safety net. They would basically, remember when Donald Trump said, we want to change how WIC is given and basically give you a bag of food. And remember that bag?
Yeah.
People were like, what is this? This is not, has no nutritional value. And how people got so upset at Michelle Obama for trying to make schools give healthy food. And to think that in this country, we would eviscerate our protections is unconscionable. Yet sometimes people think so much about, I'm anti-abortion, so I'm not really concerned. No, this is more about anti-abortion. No. If you're pro-life, let's say you're pro-life, don't you want your kids to eat and not get sick? This would make that sick, because you talked about the CDC, you talked about the FDA, you talked about the USDA, parts that at their best are underfunded and not working, and now you're going to tell us you're going to kneecap them. So I'd like us to dig into reproductive health in women, particularly Black women. You mentioned, Dr. Burnett, your experience in the 18th in Lesotho. Can we talk a bit more about, we thought Dobbs v. Jackson was bad, what Project 2025 would do specifically to women's reproductive health?
You don't have any.
Well, that was quick.
You have no rights, because the man sitting in the White House wants to tell you what you can do with your body, what or not do with your body. More importantly, it's putting the mental health impact of the reproductive rights, eliminating the reproductive rights is just unimaginable. Under these rules, which, by the way, have already been implemented to a very large degree. People saying this is 2020, Project 2025. No, 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 no. Much of this is already in action. It's just going to get worse. Because what they did not finish during his original administration, they are trying to finish now. Mm-hmm. How does that happen? It happens by who's sitting in the Supreme Court. It happens by the ability to say, well, I did this while I was in office, and so I have no accountability for it. I have no ability to get harmed by the fact that I just harmed a whole bunch of people. That's the kind of stuff. It's already happening. It's already in effect. And so now we take reproductive rights and we say, no, you can't have an abortion. No, you don't have access to, I wish Anne Marie was on right here, Dr. Anne Marie Bency Addison, because this is her bailiwick. You don't have access. Thank you. She said that 6-week abortion ban is already in place, and when most women are not even aware they are pregnant at that point. That's key. Most women have no idea that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. Just look at the timetable. And so now we're saying by the time a woman recognizes that she is pregnant, it's already too late. And who are the ones that are impacted also? I've now realized that I'm pregnant, and the child has no viability for some chromosome disorder, let's say. But yet, the agony and potential harm to the pregnant woman's body by carrying a non-viable fetus. Women already have very high mortality rates. And when you look at the mortality rate of Black and Brown, it's even higher. And it is not related to educational or economic level. The number of physicians that I know, Black female physicians that I know or have heard about, who have had either death or major medical illnesses as a result of something going wrong during pregnancy is unimaginable. But yet, we're going to eliminate the possibility of addressing that in very real ways, or addressing the ability to have contraception. Just a person who should not have, a woman who should not give birth is being told, I don't want you to prevent the pregnancy, and I don't want to help you once you get pregnant. So, and by the way, if there's a complication and the child is born with a death, with an abnormality, we're not going to help you deal with that either. So pro-life should mean life from beginning to the time that God calls us home. But you can't be pro-life and say, I'm going to force a woman to have a child. I'm going to force a woman not to be able to provide contraception. So if that woman does not want to be or should not get pregnant, I'm not going to help them there. But once they have the child, we're still not going to help you because we're not going to let you get any education. We're not going to let you get any food. We're not going to let you get any formula. We're not going to let you have economic stability. We're not going to let you do anything. But we need you to have this child.
Dr. Burnett, can we tie this to the voters sitting with their ballot? Says Proposition 2025 will not be on the ballot and people may be looking for it. How do we draw the relationship between these very dire recommendations that we know were put in place the last administration from 45 to what's on the ballot, the propositions, the initiatives, the people who say they want to be public servants. How do we keep what happened in the last administration of President 45 from being a part of the reality? Because what we know is that in Project 2017, which was a precursor document, some 344 recommendations were made, and we're told some 311 were enacted at some level. How do we prepare? How do we recognize that on our ballots up and down the ballot?
And before you answer that, Dr. Burnett, I just want to just intervene and say we can't normalize Project 2025 or Project 2017 because they're trying to tell us that, oh, every party makes transition documents. That's true. But the radical shift that we've seen with Project 2017 and 2025 is not normal. Dr. Burnett, your answer.
The thing one needs to look at when they're getting and preparing themselves to vote is who are they voting for? What have they already done? What are they telling you they're going to do? And what has been their mindset? So when you look at who's at your local level, who's at your state level, who's at the federal level, you got to look at each and every one of them. And who is going to make sure that this stuff gets defeated at all levels? One of the things we keep making mistakes about is I'm going to vote in the presidential election. That's all well and good. And if you only cast a vote for the president and don't cast a vote for the representatives and senators, your vote is null and void.
Yes.
Right.
Because the mechanism to control sits there.
Mm-hmm.
Those folk who were brought into the Supreme Court had to be validated by the House and the Senate. So are we making sure that those folk are actually saying what we want them to say, and then more importantly, doing what we want them to do? Because we are who we are, we can't say who to vote for, but I can tell you what not to do. Make sure.
And you can share who you're voting for as an example.
Well, wait.
You can't quite do that.
Yes, you can. I am an expert on that one. You can.
But you're not the one running the. So you're not the one whose license will get pulled if we don't do. So I just want to say this.
Well, let me say, when I say that, we have the do's and don'ts that have been validated by the Brennan Center and People for the American Way. And there are actually more do's than don'ts. And this is not tonight's conversation, but there are things that we can do that we really don't think we can because we take abundance of caution. And so, yes, after we know the do's and don'ts, we do that. But I am certainly one who can say, I'm not telling you who to vote for, but I am happy to share with you who I am voting for.
But that only impacts your local area, because who you can vote for does not dictate who I can vote for, because we have different folk on the ballot. So
Yes,
if I give you the
that is absolutely correct.
if I give you the perspectives of what you need to look for, I've done a greater impact for all of the states, all of the local municipalities, than if I tell you who I'm voting for in where I live outside in a suburb of Pennsylvania.
All of the above.
Right?
And I just want to, I want to come back in on this because you brought up the importance of down ballot elections.
Absolutely.
And I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, we brought on a panel of AMEs who serve in state legislatures.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, I was at Union Bethel Randallstown in Maryland. And actually, the Speaker of the House of Maryland is a member of the AME Church. And the president-elect of the National Conference of Black State Legislatures, Harold Love, is an AME pastor.
Yes.
And I've talked with Reverend Love as a Democrat in a largely Republican area. And I've talked with, we interviewed Speaker Jones about a year ago. And the things that we're seeing is like, to your point, Dr. Burnett, and to your point, Sister Dupont-Walker, sometimes we get so stuck at the top, we don't understand that the changes that are going on right now are going on at the local and the state level. There is an organization called ALEC that has been basically churning out bills, and it's a paper mill to go to state. One state, they were so lazy, they didn't change the other state's name. They just sent it through. And these legislators don't read these bills. What's the implication? We've been talking about health. Where do you think these book bannings are coming from? Where do you think these bills are coming from? School board. I live in Charleston right now. The Charleston school board's been hijacked by Mothers for Liberty because no one was paying attention to the election. Now, we're pretty sure that that will shift in this election, but people have to pay attention to everything. So Dr. Burnett told you what to look for. Now, we're not telling you to look for a D or for an R. We're telling you to look for who responds to the policies that you need to be, what's the word for tonight? Healthy.
Healthy.
And with that, I want us to hit our third question, because we're a global church. And even though we are talking about an election in the United States, we know that this election has global implications. And so one thing that I want to put on the screen right now are the Sustainable Development Goals. I would ask our tech team to put the slide that shows the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals up. These goals were approved by the United Nations to be administered by the UN Development Program to help us try to end poverty, end hunger. Look at number 3, good health and well-being, and so on. All nations committed to work towards these goals and metrics for these goals. If you take this slide down, even within the AME Church, we have a special focus on these goals because and I'm going to give one little commercial, our Women's Missionary Society, NGO, has been a faithful proponent of these goals, and they're having a conference next week. We'll put the slide up. You've seen the ads for this in the recorder, as well as with the General Secretary. It's an easy conference to go to. Go online. You can learn so much about the SDGs. So, Supervisor Burnett, let's go global now. We'll talk about what are the ramifications for Project 2025 and the Sustainable Development Goals.
I think the easiest one to look at is the USDA. The USDA, I'm sorry, not USDA, USAID. USAID, they're going to change it so that if one is looking at the office, they want to rename the office USAID to the Gender Equality and Women's Empowerment to the Office of Women, Children, and Families. Refocus the alignment and make sure that anything, and make it quote unquote unapologetically pro-life, politically appointed senior coordinator. Eliminate the more than 180 gender advisors and points of contact. That's page 259. They want to rescind President Biden's 2022 gender policy and refocus so that all references, examples, definitions, photos, and language on USAID websites remove any terms gender, gender equality, gender equity, gender diverse individuals, gender aware, gender sensitivity. Page 259, go look at it. It also wants to remove references to abortion, reproductive health, and sexual and reproductive rights. as well as sexual education materials. When you read this kind of stuff, you recognize that anybody who is applying for USAID funds has any of this stuff in their policies. Any country, any NGO, any agency that wants to apply for USAID funds cannot have any of these terms anywhere in any of their in any of their language. I'll give you an example of this. One of the ways that we were able to partner to get health clinics in more rural areas across the districts 14 through 20, let's give an example, is we were able to partner with USAID. SADA was able to partner with USAID to get some funding and to get equipment and to get other services available. But if SADA or a local or an Episcopal district or a local health commission or a local educational agency of the AME church is partnered with someone who does reproductive health and reproductive health care, they just lost their funding. And I can tell you now, one of the reasons that we're having so many problems getting funding is because this is already partially implemented. When you look at our schools, the schools in the US, if a school is state funded, the state funded schools are going to be eliminated. The funding for those state funded schools is going to be eliminated if they have quote unquote illegal alien students. Globally, everything that happened, if USDA, I said USAID, that's one. The other one is if USDA loses its ability to control food commodity and make sure that the FDA is actually working to ensure that food is healthy, even that which we export, are we making people ill when we quote unquote help them? Are we decreasing the ability of commodities that need to come in so the import-export ability is happening? How are we going to get food, y'all? How are they going to get food? If we have not started building our own farms and gardens, and this is one of my pet peeves, if we have not started growing our own farms and gardens like many of our AME churches have started doing across the globe, we are going to be in a world of hot water.
Yes.
And you just made something that I think we want to take to sit in this for a second, because I think that sometimes we think about these U.S. elections being U.S. elections. You just concretely told us why this election is important for us in the sense that it will hamper our ministry globally to allow some of these changes to take place. And you also reminded us of a very important program that is offered through the Health Commission, which allows churches to grow their own food. And I believe Reverend Carolyn Cavanis is over that program. We've seen information about that. But if you're at a church that has a plot of land and wants to plant something, or you've been planting and want to buy some more seeds, reach out to the Connection Health Commission because they can help you. We want now to, we have our health expert, the health guru, the person who kept us safe when no one else was paying attention here with us. Miriam is always right. Dr. Burnett's always, she said I could say Miriam's always right one time. So Dr. Burnett is always right. Even when you don't want to listen to her, she's always right. So right now, I know that we have many engaged listeners and we've gone through a lot of information. So we'd like for you to make your comments in the chat. Our tech team will pull them up. So right now, if you have any questions that you want to ask us, ask this panel, please do so. We have our one question at the top from the beginning, but we know we have some other ones. Are our current executive health director wanted to go back to look at the baby formula question, for example. So if we went to this one formula plan that 2025 had, what would happen when we had the baby formula shortage? I mean, what would we do? What would be the impact of making that baby formula shift?
Well, the first problem is you have to recognize that this document actually calls out the fact that we had a baby formula shortage. It is in there and says that because we didn't have a singular source, we had a baby formula shortage. That doesn't even make logical sense. Does not make logical sense. So if we don't have variations, it's about a monopoly, which drives back to economics and who's in control of our lives. The document actually says we don't want to create a monopoly, but yet you're only going to put one. And so that's one company, and it's a subset of that one company, which is a subset of more other entities, and you get one formula. Children will die. There are a lot of reasons why women can't or should not breastfeed. Maybe they're on another medication that is being passed through the breast milk. Maybe it's some other means of that causes them harm. Maybe it's a child who can't tolerate a soy-based or some other ingredient that's a minor ingredient in the formula, and it reads must have another formula, but it's not available. They will die.
I think it's interesting, and again, I'm not trying to be sexist or anything, but you can almost tell that the people who wrote these things had to have been either men or a man who has not dealt with children or formula. Because I'm gonna tell you something, in that great formula shortage, I went out to several supermarkets to go get formula for friends, and they told me, look, you can only use this formula because my child can only take it. So I got a crash course in formula to go get and take care of those things. So you can tell the people writing these things either have no experience or they just don't care.
Or Dr. Thomas, they actually have a sinister motive. And I'm not a conspiracy theory person, but there are some desires to make sure that certain undesirables are not welcomed.
Wow. We have another question up here. It's rhetorical, but it's worth asking. So our executive director also asks, so whose life is defined in pro-life? The zygote and the woman, the zygote or the woman and her existing children? So I know that's hypothetical, but Reverend Dr. Burnett, and I'm going to throw the Reverend on you for a second. Let's talk about the theology behind some of these positions, and just, because, we are told that God knew us in our womb before we were formed, and people love using that one as an excuse for certain behavior. So let's help us, doctor. Help us, Reverend Doctor. Help us.
For me, life is from the time of the zygote, and I guess I may have to define that for some folks. And then it's even beyond. When we talk about who is going, let me go back to her question. Throw her question back up there for me. Thank you. If, in fact, we are talking about pro-life being the woman and her existing children, or the woman and her future children, that's pro-life. If we're talking about the man or the sperm donor, depending on how you want to think about it, if the sperm donor and the egg donor are not healthy, automatically that's going to impact the life of the offspring. So if, in fact, we cannot get the sperm donor to be healthy and we cannot get the egg donor to be healthy, then we have further issues generationally. So these folk are saying, Pro-life is making sure that a child is born. Period. A child is born in what condition, and where do they live, and how do they live, and how do they learn? Am I going to say I'm pro-life and I don't care how you live? That is just does not make sense. If you're either pro-life for the entirety of life, or I'm anti-life. And that's how I look at it. I'm either anti-life or I'm pro-life. What category do you belong to?
I remember there was a newspaper cartoon I saw, and it had all these people yelling and shouting at a pregnant woman, "We're pro-life, we'll protect you, we're pro-life." And then when someone came out with child health after the child was born, they all have muzzles.
Right.
You won't want to say anything else.
Right. So I'm gonna force you to make a choice to have a child because I've eliminated your ability to have contraception. Let's start there. But then I'm also going to impact the fact that the child cannot be taken care of, or is taken care of in a way that is harmful to not only that child, that grown as the child grows and begins to impact community and family. And who gives anybody the right to define what family is? You want me on my soapbox? That's my soapbox. I can't define for you what your family is. In some instances, family that is not blood related is more supportive than the family that is. So what's my definition of family? That's an individual question. But it also means that if I'm pro-life, I am pro-life for family, however that person chooses to define it. Not me, because it's not mine.
And I want us to rest in this. I'm gonna take the soapbox down because we've about hit our hours. So I want us to rest in this as we wrap up. We started talking about Project 2020. We started talking about health. And Dr. Burnett, I'm so glad that you reminded us that as Christians in the Church of Allen, we are reminded that health is not just it's not just a physical condition. There are social determinants that have to do with your mental well-being, what you have access to. Some economists would say your capabilities that have something to go beyond what you're eating or drinking. And then to look at how Project 2025 will impact our holistic health.
That's right.
Because someone's going to make money off all those people in hospitals dying on the drugs, but they won't be healthy. And understanding that this is not just a debate about abortion. We could talk about abortion all the live long day. This is about how our nutritional infrastructure will change, how our healthcare system will change, how our ability to take care of our entire person will change. And then you walked us through the global issues, how Project 2025 will impact global health by severely curtailing the world's most powerful economy's ability to engage in the sustainable development goals that are so important. So you're going to hear us talk a lot about voting and about going to polls, but it's more than when we tell you that voting as if your life depends upon it. That's not a euphemism or hyperbole. Dr. Burnett told you that your life really does depend on this. And it ain't got nothing to do with, a red hat or a mispronounced Hindu name. This is about your life and the life of your family.
Yes. Yes.
That's my soapbox.
That's right.
Dr. Dupont-Walker, if you
But
could
just one.
Give us some words, and then since we have a supervisor, I would ask that you, Dr. Burnett, if you would be so kind to pray us out when we wrap. So Dr. Dupont-Walker for our closing remarks, and then closing prayer with Dr. Burnett.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for hosting us and always sending us in a direction that we will be our better selves and with excellence. Thank you, Supervisor Dr. Miriam Burnett, for bringing what you have. Your calling is something that you just don't talk, you walk the talk. And that leads us to one formula when all else fails. When you're looking at your ballot, the best determinant for what one will do is what they have done. And so if you know nothing else about the candidates and the issue, to take a look at what has happened, and that will help determine prayerfully as you go to the polls. Every eligible voter should vote. That is our goal. We are people who believe in miracles. It's our watch. It's our time. What will history record is how we handle 2024 election.
Thank you, Dr. Dupont-Walker. Dr. Burnett, our prayer, and then we can close.
Let me just say, it's not that every eligible voter should vote. Every eligible voter must vote. And for our college students, if you still have the ability to register in a state that is a pivot state, and that's where you're going to school, and that state is looking at an electoral college, that's where you need to vote. If you are originally from a state that is a pivot state and you're attending school at a state, now you got a choice. But we have to begin to do these things in advance, and we have to begin to look at all of the primaries, because your sheriff's department is picked out of the primary, not out of the regular November election. We have to begin to do all of those things, because when you look at the social determinants of health and you look at all of the pieces underneath them, everything that is on every ballot is important and determines your life and your state of health. So God, let us pray. God, we thank you for the ability to come together and have a real conversation, a conversation that must continue from now, not through November, but beyond, so that we can continue to be empowered to make a shift and make a change and be empowered across the globe to tell the folk who hold their feet to the fire, you can say one thing, but you're going to do this, is what we need to be able to say, God. So we ask that you give us power, that you give us authority, that you give us a consciousness, you give us witness, that you give us knowledge, you give us wisdom, so that we can do that. We ask now that each and every person tells 10 more people to go vote, and those 10 tell other 10, and we keep telling it, so that at each and every place that we go, we make a shift in this world. We have the possibility, we have authority, you have given it to us, God.
Thank you.
And help us, God, to take it and run with it.
Yes.
Not walk, not stroll, but run with the authority that you have given us. Because through God, all things are possible.
Thank you.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, you've got your orders for today, and we're going to come back with some more quality programming to remind you that whatever you do, you must go vote. Thank you, my sisters. You have blessed us tonight, and we will see you again very soon on the Christian Recorder Dialogues.
Amen.